Hello and welcome back. We are here for the MLB DFS Slate breakdown for July 24th. It's a fun slate. It was a fun weekend. We're going to start off by going over the review of yesterday's slate, then head into pitcher ownership, and followed by the best stacks of the day and stacks to consider. Before we get into it, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to our video. Helps us a ton, helps us keep and continue giving out free content to all you guys. Also, if you have not already, come join us at LineStar. It is only $29.99 a month. Best deal in DFS. Now, let's have some fun. Let's get into this slate. So, we will start by going to the perfect lineup from yesterday. All right, main slate on Sunday. Perfect lineup had Gore and Luzardo as the two pitchers, and then a minor little Washington two-man stack and a mixed bunch after that. So pretty interesting little lineup there. Used all the salary, which is rare for the perfect lineup, and stayed away from some of the chalk. All right, so then the winning lineup, the Czech 182 had the win here, and he had Luzardo and Gore. So Gore was a lower owned pitcher. Luzardo was big time chalk as he should have been. And then he had a nice 5-man KC stack here, and then one-offs with Schwarber, Carroll, and Rizzo. Rizzo's been slumping, but absolutely crushed it yesterday. So maybe he's coming back a little bit. Maybe the changes from that Yankees pitching coach is starting to show some signs and give them a little bit of life. So nice lineup check. Now let's check out the FanDuel perfect lineup and see what we got there. All right, Luzardo, no surprise, as he absolutely crushed it with, he didn't even get the win, but he had 12 Ks and a nice quality start there. And perfect lineup had a little bit of a Philly stack, a 2-man Philly stack, and then some one-offs very similar to the DK lineup. Now, winning lineup, Ted Clubber Lang with Luzardo. The two Philly guys that were also in the perfect lineup, and one-offs. So 239.8 here versus 326.3. So little about this roster construction. I know we keep talking about it, but only having a 2-man stack is going to be very, very hard to repeat over and over again, especially in these very big, large field contests with 13,000 entries. This is more of a cash or real small field GPP type lineup, but it had the high score this week, so congrats to Ted Clubber, or Clubber, however you want to say it. Lang, we were the winner. Now, let's get into today's slate, get into some fun. We'll start with pitching ownership, as we always do. And top, we got Yu Darvish, 42% owned. Yu is facing the Pirates, who, frankly, just haven't been that great lately. And they're not great versus righties. 289 WOBA, 140 ISO. They haven't been good versus Darvish. Opponent BVP, 62 plate attempts, only hitting 151 off of him. 26% K rate in those plate attempts too. So Darvish is definitely looking a little interesting. He's not that high priced, and we have a decent projection on him. So don't mind that one. He's also, for you FanDuel players, he is a major favorite. So, that's very interesting as well. And the Pirates are striking out a decent amount here. So next, we got Kenta Maeda, very modestly priced. And as we talked about last time he was pitching, he has just been extremely good, and he has major upside. One, Seattle striking out 24%. Two, over his last 5 starts, yeah, just a 35% K rate. This is, Strider-esque. He has been very good lately. The one thing I do have to say is he is a little inconsistent. He got shelled by Oakland, pitched great versus Seattle last week. Another thing is, this is Seattle's second time seeing him within a week. So, I'm always a little apprehensive about that, especially when a guy is inconsistent like Maeda, because partly it could be, guys figuring him out, or, he's a little bit off his game. But there is some things to kind of worry about his stuff too. His hard contact rate, almost 40%, ton of fly balls. They're hitting him pretty well. It's just that he's also missing bats. So I can see this going either way. One thing I do have to say is a 30.3% combined K rate at his salary is extremely good and very enticing. So he also has some good umpire work today. All right, next we got Luis Castillo. So Castillo also faced Minnesota over the last week, and he had a really good game too. He allowed 3 runs, but 11 Ks in 6 innings. And Minnesota just strikes out a lot versus righties, 29% K rate. So that's obviously very interesting. This Minnesota team has been hitting very well lately, though. And Castillo's averaging 40% less fantasy points when away. So that is one thing that I don't love. The other thing is Castillo hasn't been that great lately. 4.77 FIP versus 3.88 over his last 20 starts. I could really go either way on this one. Combined K rate is solid. He has upside, but, negatives. He's away. Hasn't been pitching great lately. I do have to bring up that LineStar is liking him as a projection of 22 points at his salary. Is pretty decent here. Logan Allen next, 8,700. We were all over this play last week versus Pittsburgh. He has another good matchup, 26% K rate versus lefties, low WOBA versus lefties for KC. He's been decent. The K rate is a little low with 24%, but we know he has some solid upside in the K department, as he had 8 last week. He had 5 and 3.2 innings versus KC, a week and a half ago. So, he does have some strikeout upside when he's on. His strikeout upside is just limited. Do I like Logan Allen today? Yeah, I think he's in a decent spot. Do I have to play him? Absolutely not. Jose Barrios. So he is versus the Dodgers, which you never like, but he has been very good this year. Mid-3s FIP. Over his last 5, a 29% K rate, which is real nice. 23 over the last 20, and 23.8 for the combined K rate here. So I think he's in an interesting spot here. However, I do have to bring up his opponent, Team BVP. 69 plate attempts versus the Dodgers. They're hitting 323 off of him. Has given up 4 home runs, ISO of 240, 410 WOBA. That doesn't play out well for Barrios today. He's also away with decent hitting weather in LA. So, we'll see about it. I'm not in love with going in there today. However, I would expect his ownership to even be lower than this 18%, as people don't want to play him versus the Dodgers. Michael Grove, I think Michael Grove's in a real tough spot today, and LineStar agrees with only an 8-point projection. All right, so one of the lower-owned guys, super cheap, that I could see you going to, Ashcraft. He started off the year pretty well. He's been decent lately. He is getting a little lucky with his FIP being 5.17 and ERA 3.49, and he lacks strikeout upside, but he's super cheap. He's versus these Brewers that strike out a lot. And he's averaging more fantasy points away. So I think it's kind of an interesting spot. It is extremely risky, though. But, out of the lower owned guys, there's really not much I like today. Don't love John Gray. I could see you going there. Yarborough probably doesn't have a long enough leash to really get to and lacks strikeout upside. Wainwright's away versus a very good offense and just frankly has got lit up lately, so don't know about going there as well. So pretty tough pitching situation. We're likely going to have to stay up here into some of the higher owned guys. Now let's check out FanDuel here. Projected ownership for pitchers. Yu Darvish coming in number 1, 40% owned. We talked about him. You got to like him a little bit. Kenta Maeda next, very modestly priced, taking 29%, and Luis Castillo 23%. I think Allen is a very interesting at 3% here. Corbin versus the Rockies. Look, I love to pick on Patrick Corbin. I will be the first to tell you about that. But this Rockies team versus lefties, striking out 29%. Also, low WOBA versus lefties. The one thing is that Colorado has absolutely lit up Patrick Corbin in the past. 60 plate attempts, hitting 434 off of him. Not a very high ISO, but, a solid WOBA here. But really the thing here is why I'm bringing it up. Look, combined K rate of 28% at his salary is very interesting. And he's been in decent form lately. Like, is this a play I love? No. Is it a risky play? Absolutely. But I could see you going here a little bit just based on how Colorado has been, 1, when they're away from Coors, and 2, versus lefties. So that's an interesting one. You can also take that on DraftKings as well. Probably more so on DraftKings since you use the 2 pitchers. Corbin doesn't really have the upside of Castillo, Maeda, or Darvish, or Allen for that matter. Berrios, 2%. I don't love him versus the Dodgers, but with this ownership, I understand if you do want to go there. It is a decent little leverage spot. All right, now let's go to some stacks. Stacks. My voice cracked a little bit right there. That's interesting. All right. Highest owned, we got the Brewers versus Ashcraft. We did talk about Ashcraft a little bit as a cheaper value pitcher on DraftKings. And if the Brewers are the highest owned stack, makes it some nice leverage situation there. Okay, now we're on DraftKings, and Washington is the value stack, which I absolutely agree with. They've been a very sneaky offense lately. Jake Bird is not great. It's going to be a little bit of a bullpen game here. So you have that bad Colorado bullpen that also got worse today because they traded Pierce Johnson. So do not mind going with Washington. Cincinnati is, been a great choice time and time again, especially versus Colin Ray, who's just kind of an average or slightly below average MLB pitcher. Texas is always in consideration. Brandon Bleak isn't that great. Yarborough. Toronto. Toronto is one that I am very interested today. There's good hitting weather in LA. That stadium also plays to right-handed power, and there's a lot of right-handed power in that Toronto matchup. The one thing is Grove has been decent lately, 3.46 FIP over his last 5, but 4.89 over the last 20. I think you also got to bring up the Padres here, who Quinn Prester just has not been very great since called up. So 8.68 ERA, I think you have to consider stacking against them. And you also have to consider these Diamondbacks versus Adam Wainwright, who has an 8.29 FIP over his last 5. All right, so our highest projected, we got Cincinnati, we got the Dodgers, we got the Padres. All 3 I like. We also have the Diamondbacks in this. Now look, you're not likely not playing this Dodgers stack because the salary is so high, but there's a lot of usable stacks here on the highest projected one. So I think you absolutely can use these, especially some of the ones that are a little bit lower owned. Like this Dodger stack, 33% owned with a 47 point projection. I am absolutely glad to give up, say, a point and a half or 2 points of projection for a lot less ownership here. So I think that one is interesting. Now let's look at some value stacks. Minnesota is popping up. Now Minnesota's been pretty sneaky offense. Luis Castillo's been a lot worse away. So I think on the value side, Minnesota, is a little interesting. Royals versus Logan Allen. Logan Allen hasn't been working deep into games, even though he's been decent. You're going to get some of that Cleveland bullpen, so maybe they can make something happen here. Cleveland's very interesting against Yarborough. Brewers versus Ashcraft is very interesting. I think Ashcraft can get lit up a little bit, as we have seen, and his FIP shows mid-5 FIP. A lot of different ways to go there. Now, for the ceiling plays, Dodgers all over the ceiling. So I think you have to be pretty interested in the Dodgers today. I do expect them to be one of the highest owned stacks. Houston is an interesting one. This is a very low owned stack here. Has some nice upside. Not very expensive. And versus John Gray, who, hasn't been a world beater lately. 4.79 FIP over his last 20. FIP of 5 over his last 5. So that Houston stack's very interesting. And the Padres also. Presser hasn't been great. They're at home. The team's been hitting. I like it a lot, as well as the Diamondbacks here. I think there's, a lot of different ways you can go on this 8-game slate. The highest implied total teams, Diamondbacks, Washington, Cincinnati, and Milwaukee. Kind of interesting. There's, several teams on that are rather cheap. And, the implied totals are coming up there. So I think that with that, there's probably going to be a lot of people paying up for pitcher tonight. So, might be interesting going a little more mid-range and getting some of the more potent offenses instead of a weak offense in a great spot. All right, guys, you guys have a very interesting night. Have great luck, and let's get some takedowns, guys. I'll see you back tomorrow. Adios.